The first time Kim Dae saw her, he canceled a $50 million meeting. His men thought someone had died. They stood in the glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor. 4 attorneys, 2 financial analysts, 3 senior executives flown in from Singapore. And they waited and waited and received finally a single message from their host's phone. Postpone the meeting. Something has come up. They exchanged glances across the walnut table, whispered to each other in the polished language of people who had been trained never to show alarm. What could possibly pull Kim Dae from a $50 million merger? A threat? A death in the organization? A crisis in one of the port operations? They were wrong on every count. Someone had simply handed him a flyer, a bright yellow flyer. I pressed through the open door of his car at a red light in Itaewon by a woman who didn't even look at him properly when she did it. A woman who laughed at him, easily unafraid, and closed the door and went back to the pavement like nothing had happened. Because for her, nothing had. But for Kim Dae, the man who had run Seoul's most feared criminal empire since he was 26, who had never once paused for a woman, who had been described by the people closest to him as someone who had surgically removed the capacity to want anything he could not control. Something had happened. Something he did not have a word for. Something he would spend the next several months learning the shape of, slowly and painfully and against every instinct he had spent his entire life building. This is that story. If you're new here, welcome. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we drop stories like this every week. And if you've been here before, you already know what's coming. Stay till the end. You won't regret it. The city of Seoul did not sleep, but Kim Dae made it bow. On the 43rd floor of the Dae Group Tower in Gangnam, the lights never went off. Security rotated in 6-hour shifts. The elevator required a biometric scan, a passcode, and a secondary voice authentication that changed every 72 hours. 3 black SUVs were parked in the private basement at all times, engines warm, drivers awake, ready for a departure that could come at 2 in the afternoon or 2 in the morning. Kim Dae did not operate on a schedule that the world could predict. That was not arrogance. That was survival. He was 34 years old and he had run the Dae Syndicate, Seoul's most feared criminal organization disguised beneath the clean glass face of a legitimate conglomerate, since he was 26. Before him, his father had run it. Before his father, his grandfather, 3 generations of men who had learned that power was not given, it was taken. And then it was protected with a ruthlessness so absolute that enemies stopped being enemies. They simply disappeared. He believed nothing in the city could still surprise him. He was wrong. A girl with a yellow flyer was about to prove it. His office reflected his character. No personal photographs, no art that meant anything. The furniture was expensive because quality reduced the frequency of replacement, not because he cared about aesthetics. His desk was a slab of dark walnut the size of a dining table. His chair was custom-fitted leather, ergonomic, black. On the desk at any given time, 1 open file, 1 fountain pen, 1 glass of water. Nothing more. His second-in-command, Oh Seung-jae, Honan had worked alongside him for 9 years. In those 9 years, Seung-jae had watched women, beautiful, powerful, devastating women, attempt to reach Kim Dae in every way imaginable. The socialites who attended the same charity galas and positioned themselves in his sightline for hours. The executives' daughters who engineered business introductions that were transparently not about business. The women his own mother sent, dressed beautifully, bearing expensive gifts, trained in the art of making powerful men feel chosen. Not one of them had ever received more than a single nod of acknowledgement. Seung-jae had once, in a rare moment of personal courage, fueled by good whiskey at a company dinner, asked him about it. "Do you not want someone, boss?" Kim Dae had looked at him with those flat, with dark eyes. The eyes that made grown men confess things they had spent years hiding, and said simply, "Want is a vulnerability. I don't carry vulnerabilities." That was the end of the conversation. The women who worked in his orbit had developed an unofficial protocol. It was never written down. It was passed woman to woman on the first week of employment, always in the form of a gentle warning delivered over coffee in the break room. He does not see you. Do not try to make him. It will not end badly. it will simply end in nothing, which is somehow worse. The night that everything began, Kim Dae was in Itaewon. Not for personal reasons. He owned 3 businesses in that district: a hotel, a private members club, and a logistics company. And there had been a dispute between 2 of his managers that had escalated in a way that required his physical presence to resolve. The dispute was settled in 12 minutes. One manager was relocated. The other received a formal warning that, in the language of the Dae syndicate, meant something considerably more serious than the words implied. Kim Dae had been in the building for 19 minutes when he left. His driver brought the car to the side entrance. He got in. His phone was already open to the next file, a shipping contract dispute involving a partner in Busan. He did not look up as the car pulled forward. The car stopped at a red light at the intersection of the main road, and then his door opened. Not forcefully, not with aggression. It opened with the cheerful confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea what they were doing. A hand, brown-skinned, slender, holding a bright yellow paper, appeared through the door. "Hi, sorry to bother you. Here, take one of these. We're doing a community dinner this Saturday. Everyone's welcome. It's free. Food from around the world. It'll be so fun. Please come." The voice was warm and rapid, tumbling over itself with genuine enthusiasm, carrying a musical lilt that was not Korean, not quite American either. Something else entirely, something warm and coastal and full of sun. Kim Dae looked up from his phone. For the first time in longer than he could remember, he looked up without knowing why. She was leaning into the open car door, arm extended, yellow flyer in hand, not yet having looked directly at him. She was glancing back at her companion, a Korean woman standing on the pavement, holding a stack of the same flyers, both of them laughing at something. Then she turned, and she looked at him. The smile did not fall immediately. It flickered, just for a moment, the way a candle flickers in a breeze that does not quite extinguish it. She registered, in that half-second, something about his expression. Perhaps the absolute stillness of it. Perhaps the quality of the car. Perhaps just the way he looked at her. Not with the annoyance of a man interrupted, but with something far more unsettling. Attention. Total, complete, undivided attention. And then she did something that no one in Kim Dae's world had done in years. She laughed, not nervously, not apologetically, a real laugh. Quick, self-deprecating, covering the flicker of uncertainty with something genuine. "Oh, sorry. You look very busy. But still, you should come. Saturday, the address is on the flyer. Free jollof rice." She closed the door. She was back on the pavement before the light changed, already turning to hand flyers to people on the street. Her companion saying something that made her laugh again. The yellow papers bright against the evening. The light turned green. Sung-jae, in the front passenger seat, glanced carefully at the rearview mirror. Kim Dae was still holding the yellow flyer. He was looking at it. The car moved forward into traffic. When they arrived at the tower 20 minutes later, and Sung-jae reached to take the flyer as part of his routine management of documents, Kim Dae's hand moved. He put the flyer in his inner jacket pocket. Sung-jae stared at the pocket for a moment. Then he looked straight ahead and said nothing. The next morning, Kim Dae had a $50 million meeting. At 9 o'clock, his assistant, Park Ji-yeon, received a message from his phone. "Postpone the meeting. Something has come up." Ji-yeon walked very quickly to Sung-jae's office. "He canceled," she said, without preamble. Sung-jae set his phone down carefully. His expression was that of a man processing something that does not yet fully compute. "Everyone is fine," he said. He had already called the security detail. Nothing had happened. No threat had materialized. No emergency had surfaced, which was somehow the most alarming possible answer. "Then what? Handle the Singapore team," Sung-jae said. "I'll find out." He did not find out, because Kim Dae was not in the tower. He had left at 8:15 before any of his team arrived. In his personal car, not the armored vehicle, his own black sedan, alone, without a driver, without security. He was in Itaewon, parked on the side street near the intersection where the light had turned green the night before, sitting in the car with the yellow flyer open on the steering wheel, reading the address for the community dinner, printed in cheerful block letters at the bottom. He did not know why he was here. That was new. Kim Dae always knew why he was somewhere. Every movement had a purpose. Every hour had a function. All he could come back to was the laugh, quick and real and completely unafraid of him. He had been looked at in every possible way. Fear, desire, calculation, reverence, resentment. He had cataloged these looks so thoroughly that he could identify them before they fully formed. She had looked at him with none of these. She had looked at him the way you look at someone sitting on a bench in a park. A passing registration of another human being, brief, unloaded, and immediately released. He folded the flyer carefully and put it back in his jacket pocket. Then he called Seung-jae. I need CCTV footage from the Itaewon intersection of Noksapyeong-dairo and the side street behind Club Muse. Last night, 9:15 to 9:30. A pause. The woman from the car, Seung-jae said carefully. It was not a question. 2 hours, Kim Dae said, and ended the call. The footage arrived in 90 minutes. He watched it in his car. He watched the moment the door opened. He watched her turn and see him. He watched the flicker in the laugh in the closing of the door. He watched her move back to the pavement. It returned to her companion, continued distributing flyers with the same easy energy she'd had before the encounter. She had not looked back at the car. He watched the clip 4 times. Then he called Seung-jae back. The woman. Find out who she is. Her name was Agatha David, 26 years old, Nigerian-born, raised partly in Lagos and partly in London, currently on a 1-year cultural exchange fellowship in Seoul through a program partnered with Yonsei University. She had been in the country for 4 months. She lived in a shared apartment in Mapogu with 2 Korean roommates and 1 Japanese student she had met through the fellowship. She worked 3 times a week at a small Afro-Caribbean food stall in the Mangwon market. Not because she needed the money, but because, as Seung-jae's contact reported from a conversation overheard at the stall, she had told the owner she wanted to learn how to run a small business while she was in Korea. She was organizing the community dinner referenced on the flyer. She had been planning it for 3 weeks, sourcing sponsors from small local businesses, personally making phone calls to 5 neighborhood associations. Seung-jae delivered this report in person, his face professionally neutral. Is she connected to anyone? Kim Dae meant politically, criminally, institutionally. No, she's a student, clean, no complications. A moment of quiet. The market, Kim Dae said. Which stall? Seung-jae looked at him steadily. Boss, what exactly are you? Which stall? Seung-jae told him. The following afternoon, Kim Dae walked into the Mangwon market in a plain dark jacket with no visible security and stopped at a small Afro-Caribbean food stall. Agatha David was behind the counter, wearing an apron printed with small suns, her locks pulled back with a yellow cloth, arguing cheerfully with the stall owner, a Korean woman in her 50s named Mrs. Bae, about whether the jollof rice needed more tomato. It needs more tomato, Agatha was saying firmly. Mrs. Bae, I'm telling you, I'm from Nigeria. I know jollof rice. My customers are Korean. They don't want too spicy. Jollof isn't about spicy. It's about depth. It's a completely different... She looked up. Kim Dae was standing at the counter. The recognition arrived slowly, like something surfacing through water. The car, the intersection, and the man who had looked at her with that terrifying stillness. And then she smiled. Oh, hey, you came. He blinked. It was the smallest thing. But Seung-jae, watching from 30 meters away, pretending to examine vegetables, saw it. Kim Dae blinked. The community dinner isn't until Saturday, she continued, leaning on the counter with both forearms, completely at ease. But you're here, so... Are you hungry? We have jollof rice, plantain, a Korean-Nigerian fusion thing that Mrs. Bae invented, which I told her is a crime against both cultures, but it's actually really good. I'll take whatever you recommend, Kim Dae said. She looked at him. You're not very expressive, are you? Mrs. Bae, behind her, made a small noise that might have been a gasp. Kim Dae said nothing. Agatha laughed. That same quick, a real laugh, and turned to fill a container. 1 jollof rice, extra tomato because I'm making it, and Mrs. Bae is not watching me right now. I am watching you, Mrs. Bae said. And 1 plantain. On the house because you look like you've never eaten street food in your life. And that is genuinely sad. She pushed the container across the counter. He paid double the price she had quoted before she said it was on the house. She held out the excess. I said on the house. I prefer to pay. I prefer you take the change. They looked at each other. This was the first time in his adult life that anyone had held money out to Kim Dae and told him to take it back. He left the money. She put it in the community dinner fund jar on the counter without further argument, as if the matter had simply resolved itself in her favor, and that was that. He walked away with his container of food. He did not eat it. He sat in his car for 40 minutes, the untouched container on the passenger seat, thinking about the way she had said you've never eaten street food in your life, and that is genuinely sad with such complete absence of malice or performance, that it had landed somewhere in his chest like a small, very specific weight. Then he drove back to the tower. Seung-jae was waiting. He looked at the untouched food container. He looked at Kim Dae's face. He opened his mouth. Kim Dae walked past him into his office and closed the door. If you're loving this story already, drop a comment below and tell me. Are you team Kim Dae or are you already obsessed with Agatha? Let's go. He went back. Not the next day. He waited 3 days because even in this, whatever this was, Kim Dae operated with discipline. He was not going to become the kind of man who could not regulate himself. He told himself each time that he was simply following a curiosity, that he was not compromised, that he was gathering information the way he gathered all information, methodically, without attachment to the outcome. He told himself this on day 1. On day 2, he had Seung-jae confirm that Agatha would be at the market the following afternoon. On day 3, he went. He came back 4 more times over the following 2 weeks. He bought food each time. He stood at the counter for a variable amount of time, sometimes 3 minutes, yes, sometimes 12, during which Agatha talked to him with the exact same uncalculated openness she used with every other customer. She told him about the community dinner planning, the sponsor who had dropped out at the last minute, the challenge of coordinating dietary restrictions across 6 different nationalities. She asked him ordinary questions. What part of Seoul are you from? Do you have siblings? Do you actually like Korean food? Or do you just eat it because it's there? He answered in the minimal way he answered everything. Short sentences, true ones. She accepted this without trying to excavate more. Most people treated his short answers as a door they needed to find a way through. She treated them as the complete answer they were and moved on. It was extraordinary. Then one afternoon, a man stopped at the stall, Korean, in the late 20s, the comfortable confidence of someone who liked himself, and said something in Korean that made Agatha laugh and shake her head. He leaned on the counter. She leaned back from it slightly. The dynamic was clear. He was interested. She was friendly but not reciprocating. He was persisting in the good-natured way of a man who hadn't yet absorbed the signal. Kim Dae watched this for 30 seconds. He became aware of something moving through him that he had not felt in so long he almost didn't recognize it. Something hot and structureless and completely outside the vocabulary of control he had spent his life constructing. When the man finally moved on, still smiling over his shoulder, Kim Dae said to Agatha, without any particular change in his voice, "He comes here often." Agatha glanced at him, a quick assessment. Oh, and then a small smile that was different from her usual one, slightly more knowing. "That's Jimin. He's a regular. He's harmless." "I didn't say he wasn't. You didn't have to." She pushed his food across the counter. "You're very controlled, you know that? Like, everything about you is controlled. Even when you're feeling something, it's still controlled. Just visible, if you know what to look for." He looked at her. "What am I feeling?" he said. It was the most honest question he had asked anyone in years. He wasn't being rhetorical. He genuinely wanted to know what she saw. She considered him with her head tilted slightly. "I think you're curious," she said, "and I think that's not something that happens to you very often, and I think it's making you uncomfortable." He picked up his food. "Enjoy your afternoon," he said. He walked away. He sat in the car. He ate the jollof rice. Saturday came. The community dinner. He did not go. He had told himself he would not. At 7:45 p.m., he was in the back of his official car heading to a meeting in Apgujeong. He canceled the meeting. He told his driver to go to Ida 1. He stood outside the community hall for 4 minutes before going in. The hall was warm and loud and smelled of at least 7 different cuisines simultaneously. Fold-out tables covered in plastic cloths, mismatched chairs, a banner above the door that said, "World Kitchen, come as you are" in Korean, English, and 3 other languages. People of more nationalities than Kim Dae had encountered in a single room outside of international business summits, talking and laughing and passing dishes between tables. He was, eyed by every possible measure, out of place. He got a plate. He moved through the room. He found her at the far end near the kitchen entrance, directing volunteers with a clipboard, wearing a bright orange wrap dress and her locks loose around her face, moving with the focused energy of someone who had been planning this for weeks and was now living it in real time. She caught sight of him, and then her face opened into a smile so genuine, not the market smile, something larger than that, something surprised and real and uncomplicated, that Kim Dae felt it land in the same place in his chest where her words had landed the first time. She crossed the room. "You came," she said. "I said I might." "You said nothing, actually. You just walked away." But she was still smiling. "Go eat something. Go talk to people. It'll be good for you." She said it'll be good for you the way a person says it to a friend, without hierarchy, without performance, as if she had decided on her own authority that she knew what was good for him and saw no reason not to say so. She was called away by a volunteer with a question. He stood with his plate and ate jollof rice and watched her work. She worked for 2.5 hours. She moved from table to table, resolving small crises with laughter, translating between languages, sitting briefly with an elderly Korean woman who had come alone and looked uncertain, kneeling at the level of a child who had spilled something to help clean it up with zero irritation, dancing briefly in the corner with her Japanese roommate when someone put on music. He watched all of it. He ate 3 plates of food. At the end of the evening, when the hall was clearing, she found him still sitting in the corner. She sat down across from him, visibly tired, happy tired, not drained tired. She kicked her shoes off under the table. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for the invitation." A small silence. Comfortable. "You organized all of this," he said. "Me and the team. About 15 of us. Why?" She looked at him, thinking. Because community is something you make. It doesn't just exist. People are lonely all over this city, especially people who came from somewhere else. You have to build the spaces where connection can happen. Someone has to build them. He thought of his tower, the 43rd floor, the glass and the silence and the files. "And you decided to be the one to build them," he said. "Someone has to," she said again simply. "Then, what do you do?" I've been talking to you for 2 weeks and I don't even know your name." "Kim," he said. "I work in finance." She nodded without suspicion. "You're a very intense person, Kim." "I've been told." "I don't mean it as a criticism. I mean, you pay attention to things. Most people are half present. You're completely present. It's a little disconcerting, but it's also kind of nice." He did not know what to do with the word nice. No one had used it about him in his adult memory. "I should go," he said. "Okay." She was already pulling her clipboard back, making notes for the cleanup. "Get home safe, Kim." He walked out into the Itaewon night. He stood on the pavement for a moment. In his pocket, his phone had received 11 messages and 2 missed calls during the 3 hours he had been inside. He did not check them. And he took out the flyer, soft now, worn at the folds from 2 weeks of living in his jacket pocket. He looked at the back in the streetlight, her handwriting, more tomatoes. "Call Mr. Park, re-sound system. Remind G about tablecloths. Don't forget to eat." He folded it carefully, put it in his wallet, and walked to his car. The problem with Kim Dae's world was that it did not permit invisible things to remain invisible. He had spent 3 weeks managing his visibility carefully. Plain clothes, personal car, no security detail, arriving at the market at midday when his schedule created enough of a gap that his absence would not generate alarm. He had told himself each time that he was not compromised, that he was gathering information the way he gathered all information, methodically, without attachment. He had almost believed this. Then Shung-jae put a photograph on his desk. This was taken 4 days ago. Mangwon Market, the food stall. Kim Dae looked at it. A decent shot, taken from a distance with a zoom lens. Himself at the counter, Agatha across from him, both of them in clear profile. And the angle caught her mid-laugh, and him. And this was the part that Kim Dae registered with a cold, specific unease, watching her with an expression he had not known his face was making. Not his usual expression, not the flat, controlled mask he wore in every public and private moment of his professional life. Something open. "Who took this?" he said. His voice was very level. "Shin Min-jun's people." Shung-jae sat carefully across the desk. Shin Min-jun was the head of the second largest criminal structure in Seoul. A man who had spent the better part of a decade looking for a crack in Kim Dae's armor, not through conventional violence or business pressure, but through something colder, ideology. Shin genuinely believed, and had said so in rooms he thought were private, that emotional attachment was the single mechanism by which great criminal empires destroyed themselves from within. He kept a clean life on principle. No family he loved publicly, no habits anyone could use against him. He had built his entire organization around the philosophy that a man without attachments was a man who could not be broken. He had believed Kim Dae was the same. He had believed it, apparently, until 4 days ago. They know who she is? Not yet, but they will. And there was a second name in Shung-jae's report that morning, Choi Wook-jin, a name that appeared rarely in public record and frequently in the private histories of people who had made serious mistakes in Seoul's underworld. Choi was older than Shin, quieter. He carried a grudge against the Dai Syndicate that predated Kim Dae's leadership entirely. A territory dispute his father had dismissed on terms that had never sat right. It had been dormant long enough that Kim Dae had deprioritized it, filed it in the category of historical tensions below the threshold of active concern. He had miscalculated. Choi had been watching for months, and unlike Shin, whose threat was ideological, Choi was transactional in the coldest possible way. Kim Dae had something that mattered to him now. That thing could be used as leverage. That was the whole calculation. No philosophy required. 2 men, 2 different reasons to move against the same point. Kim Dae sat back in his chair. His face had returned to its normal surface. But behind it, something had shifted. The precise shift of a man reclassifying a situation from personal to operational. "Increase surveillance on the Shin organization," he said. "I want to know the moment they have a name." Shung-jae looked at him steadily. "Boss, are you going to keep going to the market?" A moment of silence. "That's all," Kim Dae said. Shung-jae left. Kim Dae pulled out his phone. He looked at the contact he had added 4 days ago. From Shung-jae's research, not from her. He had not used it. He had told himself he would not. He typed a message. Saturday's dinner was well organized. Kim. He stared at it for a long moment. He sent it. The response came 20 minutes later. "Kim, you texted. How did you get this number actually? Don't answer that. I'm choosing not to be creeped out. Thank you. I think it went really well." Mrs. Maybay cried a little at the end, which I think means it was a success. "Are you coming to the next one?" "I'm thinking December." He read the message 3 times. He typed, "Possibly." She replied, "That's basically a yes from you, I can tell." He put his phone down. He sat in the silence of his office. And then, for the first time in something close to a decade, Kim Dae smiled. It was small, brief. It crossed his face and was gone before any camera in the world could have captured it. But it happened. He told himself he would tell her, not everything, but enough. Enough for her to make an informed decision about whether she wanted to continue existing in the vicinity of his attention. He owed her that. It was the right thing to do. He told himself this on a Thursday. On Friday, he went to the market. She was mid-argument with Mrs. Bay about the pricing structure for the upcoming winter menu. It was impressive. She held her ground with complete warmth. No anger, no condescension, just the absolute confidence of someone who had done her research and believed in her position and was not going to pretend otherwise to make someone more comfortable. Mrs. Bay conceded 2 points. Agatha noticed Kim Dae mid-argument, gave him the "I'll be with you in a second" look without breaking her sentence, finished her point, and then turned to him with the easy transition of someone who could fully inhabit multiple contexts simultaneously. "Hi, what are you having?" "I need to tell you something," he said. She looked at him. Her expression shifted, not alarmed, but attentive. The full attentiveness she brought to things she considered important. "Okay," she said. She leaned on the counter. "Tell me." He looked at her face, the brown eyes clear and direct, the small scar near her left ear from a childhood bicycle fall in Lagos, the faint perpetual upward curve at the corners of her mouth, the yellow cloth in her locks. "The area around this market," he said, "can be unsafe, particularly the route to the station. You should take a taxi." She blinked, then she laughed. "That's what you needed to tell me? Kim, I'm a black woman who grew up in Lagos and lived in London. I know how to navigate a city." "Not this particular situation," he said carefully. She studied him. Something moved behind her eyes. That quick intelligence processing the gap between what he'd said and what he meant. "Is there something specific I should know about?" she asked. He looked at her. The correct answer was yes. The answer he gave was, "Just be careful." "You're doing that thing," she said, "where you're saying less than you mean." "I often say less than I mean." "I know, but this feels different." She tilted her head. "Kim, are you in some kind of trouble?" The absurdity of it, the particular, extraordinary absurdity of Agatha David asking Kim Dye if he was in trouble, as if he were the person in this situation who required protecting. He almost smiled. "No," he said, "I'm fine." She reached under the counter and produced a small printed card, the community dinner logo on the front, a handwritten phone number on the back. "This is my number. If something is wrong and you want to talk, call me. Okay? I mean it." He looked at the card. She had written her number on the back of a community dinner flyer. The symmetry of it hit him with a force entirely disproportionate to the object. A small card, a handwritten number. He took it. "Thank you," he said. And because he could not stop it, "Why are you kind to people?" She blinked. "Because what else would I be?" she said, simply, without philosophy. He nodded. He paid for his food. He left. He sat in his car. He took out the yellow flyer from his wallet. Soft now, worn at the creases, carried for weeks like a talisman. He placed her new card behind it, and then he made a phone call that ended, within 24 hours, the Shin organization's interest in Agatha David through channels that were not visible, not traceable, and involved the kind of institutional pressure that Kim Dae had spent 14 years building the capacity to apply. Shin's men never came near her again, but Choi was not Shin. Choi was patient in a way that Shin had never managed to be, and Choi had now confirmed the name. October became November. The fellowship continued. Mrs. Bae gave Agatha more responsibility at the stall. She began teaching a weekly community Korean language exchange session in Mapo that quickly grew too popular for its original space and moved to a larger room. She organized a winter coat donation drive for migrant workers in Yeongdeungpo. She did these things the way she did everything, without announcing them, without making them about herself, simply because they needed doing and she was there. Kim Dae knew all of this. He knew some of it from Seung-jae's reports. He knew more of it because Agatha told him. They texted now, daily, not long exchanges. She had a life. He had whatever his existence constituted, but consistent in the way that consistent things become structural. She told him about her days in the Rapid. On Sensory Way, she experienced everything. The market was wild today. A dog ate part of Mrs. Bae's signage, and she chased it 3 stalls down, and I almost died laughing. He replied with 2 or 3 words that were, by his standards, effusive. "Mrs. Bae is formidable." She replied, "Don't let her hear you say that. Her head will grow." He went to the market twice a week. He ate the food now. She had noticed and said, "See? Street food is civilizing," which was the first time in recent memory that anyone had used the word civilizing about him, with no awareness of how surreal it was. He also helped her without announcement. The December dinner needed a larger venue. A scheduling conflict had closed off the original hall. She had been making calls for 2 weeks and hitting dead ends. She mentioned it to him not as a request, she just as a piece of life she was currently navigating. He made 1 phone call. 3 days later, a community center in Itawandong contacted Agatha to inform her that a previously unavailable space had opened up, free of charge as part of the center's community partnership program. She texted him that evening. "You absolute mystery. Did you do something?" He did not reply for 6 minutes. Then, "The center has a community partnership program." A longer pause from her side. Then, "Kim, who are you?" He stared at that question. He typed, "Someone who wanted you to have the space." She replied, "Okay, thank you." Genuinely. And then, after a moment, "Come to the dinner. I mean it this time. Not as a visitor, as someone who helped make it happen." He went. He sat at a table and ate and talked. Actually talked. More than he had talked in one evening in years, and watched Agatha move through the room doing the thing she did, which was simply making people feel visible, and he understood something he had been circling for weeks without landing on. He did not want to be near her because she was interesting or because she had handed him a flyer and laughed without fear. He wanted to be near her because she was the only place he had been, in as long as he could remember, where he did not have to be Kim Day of the Day Syndicate. He was just Kim, who ate jollof rice and received practical advice about street food and got told when he was being opaque and was asked with genuine curiosity and no agenda if he was okay. He was not okay. He had not been okay for a very long time in ways he had never had the language for, or because the men in his family did not discuss okayness. They discussed outcomes. He sat at a fold-out table in a community hall in Itaewon and felt something he had not felt since he was 14 years old, before his father had restructured him into what the family required. He felt like a person. It was terrifying. The evening ended. The volunteers left. It was just the two of them in the hall. She was sitting on the edge of a table, shoes off again, clipboard in her lap, making her end-of-event notes. He was folding tablecloths, which no one had asked him to do, and which Agatha was watching with an expression he couldn't quite read. Surprised, pleased, something else beneath that he was not yet fluent in. She said without looking up, "Are you going to tell me eventually?" "Tell you what?" "Who you are." She looked up then. Not the real version, not the finance version." He was still for a moment. "What makes you think there's another version?" "Kim." She said his name the way she said everything, directly, with warmth, with the patience of someone who was not in a hurry. "I'm from Lagos. I've met men with power. I know what it looks like. The way you move, the way people around you arrange themselves, the way you solved my venue problem in 3 days, the way you told me to take taxis without explaining why." A pause. "I'm not scared. I just want to know who I'm talking to." He set down the tablecloth. He crossed the hall and sat in the chair across from where she was perched on the table, so they were at eye level. He looked at her for a long moment. "The things I do," he said slowly, "are not things I can explain without changing what this is." "What is this?" she asked, quietly. He had no word for it. His vocabulary had been built entirely in the context of transaction, strategy, and control. This was none of those things. "I don't know," he said, and it was the most honest thing he had said to another person in years. She watched him. "Are you dangerous?" she asked. He held her gaze. "Yes," he said, "but not to you." She was quiet for a while. Outside, the sounds of the Itaewon night. Traffic, voices, music from a distant bar. "I believe you," she said finally. He was not sure he had expected that. "You should ask more questions," he said. "I will," she said. "Eventually, but not tonight." She slid off the table, picked up her shoes, padded to the storage room to put the clipboard away. When she came back, she had her coat on. "Walk me to the taxi. It's late and I should take your advice about not walking to the station." The corner of his mouth moved. "Is that what you call it?" "I call it exercising judgment." She smiled. "Come on." They walked out together into the Itaewon night. He flagged a taxi. She got in. Before she closed the door, she said, "Kim." "Yes. I'm glad you came to take that flyer, even though you definitely didn't come to take a flyer." She smiled again. That real one, the one that had no performance in it at all. "Good night." She closed the door. He stood on the pavement and watched the taxi until it turned the corner. Then he stood there a moment longer in the noise and light of the Seoul night. his hand in his jacket pocket against the wallet that held the flyer and the card. He took out his phone and called Seung-jae. "I need to tell you something," he said. Seung-jae waited. "I am in significant trouble," Kim Dae said. Seung-jae was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know, boss. I've known for about 6 weeks. It was Choi who moved first, not Shin. Shin had been neutralized through institutional pressure. The quiet language of a man telling another man, without words, that a particular direction would be fatal to his operation. Shin had understood. Shin, despite everything, was a pragmatist. Choi was not a pragmatist. Choi Wook-jin was something older and more specific, a man with a philosophical conviction that emotional attachment was not just weakness, but betrayal, a betrayal of the structure that power required. He had watched Kim Dae's grandfather build an empire through absolute detachment. He had watched Kim Dae's father maintain it the same way. And then he had watched Kim Dae, the sharpest of the three, the coldest, with the most architecturally brilliant, walk into a market in Mapo twice a week to stand at a food stall and talk to a girl. It disgusted him, not personally, ideologically. "He's become soft," Choi told his lieutenants, in a room that he assumed was private. "And a soft man's empire is already falling. We simply need to accelerate the timeline. The Dai Syndicate was built by men who owned nothing they couldn't walk away from. The moment you have something to lose, you've already lost the war." He believed that what he was doing was not cruelty. It was correction. On a Tuesday in mid-November, Agatha left the market at 2 p.m. and walked to a printing shop 2 streets over to pick up the new flyers for the December dinner. She had designed them herself, switching from yellow to warm red for the winter edition. 4 men, 2 in front, and 2 behind. She noticed something was wrong before it happened. Not her notice exactly, but the notice of Seung-jae's man, who was 30 meters behind and was already on the phone as the configuration formed. Kim Dae received the call while reviewing a contract on the 43rd floor. He left the building. He drove himself. Seung-jae was already at the scene with 3 men by the time Kim Dae arrived. They had blocked the perimeter, and the situation had not reached Agatha, who was inside the printing shop unaware, picking up her flyers, probably still debating font choices. But one of Choi's men had been faster. He had entered the shop. Kim Dae walked in 40 seconds later. The man was at the counter. Agatha was behind it. In her expression, the first expression he had ever seen on her face that was not some variation of warmth or ease, was flat and still in the way that he recognized as a person managing fear by not moving. Her arms were at her sides. The stack of red flyers was on the counter between them. The man had not touched her. He was saying something low and in Korean, and Kim Dae's brain translated it as he crossed the shop floor without accelerating, which was the most controlled thing he had done in a long time. "Tell him this is a message. Tell him Choi remembers." The man turned at the sound of footsteps. He saw Kim Dae. The color left his face. Kim Dae said very quietly, "Step away from the counter." The man stepped away from the counter. 3 of Seung-jae's men appeared in the doorway. Kim Dae looked at Agatha. She was looking at him. Not at the men, at him, and the expression on her face had shifted from managed fear to something else. Processing. Fast, intelligent processing. She was watching the way the men at the door had arranged themselves. She was watching the way the Choi operative had responded to Kim Dae's voice, like a man responding to something above a gun. She was understanding things in real time. "Are you hurt?" he said. "No," she said. "Stay here." He looked at the shopkeeper, very small and very still behind the far end of the counter. "Close for the afternoon." Then he went outside. What followed was not a conversation in the conversational sense. It was a transmission. He spoke. His men ensured that speaking was the only available option. And what he communicated in the clear language of the syndicate was this: Choi's 20-year grudge had now become a liability that Choi's organization was not structured to survive. The territory dispute that Choi's father had lost was gone. The terms that had never sat right were the terms. And what had almost happened in the printing shop was the last time any part of Choi's operation came within a street of her. If it happened again, the response would not be a transmission. Choi would receive this within the hour. Choi would understand it. When he came back inside, the shop was empty except for Agatha. She was sitting on the floor with her back against the counter, the stack of red flyers in her arms, knees pulled up, not crying, breathing in a measured way. The aftermath of adrenaline, the body returning to itself. He sat down on the floor beside her, not across from her, beside her. She looked at him sideways. Finance, she said. Yes. Not finance. No. A long silence. Are you going to tell me now? She said. Yes, he said. He told her. Not everything, but the shape of it, the structure, the family history and what it had built and what he had inherited and chosen to maintain, and the way it existed in the city around them. Not invisible, but translated, legitimate on the surface. The underworld in the substructure. She listened without interruption. When he finished, she was quiet for a moment. The venue, she said. Yes. The men who followed me. Before. Yes. You knew about them. Yes. And the man in here just now, he was sending you a message. Using me. Yes, he won't do it again. She looked at the flyers in her arms. Red. Winter edition. One near the top of the stack had a smear on it. Dark. And he looked at it. Blood. Not hers, but blood on her flyer. The yellow one was in his wallet. This red one, the first of the winter edition, the new beginning, had blood on it. He took it carefully from the stack. She let him. He folded it, looked at her. I should have told you earlier, he said. I chose not to because I did not want this to change. What is this? She said, the third time she had asked him. Something I don't have a word for, he said. Something I have not had before. She looked at him for a long time. I need to think, she said. I know. I'm not saying no to whatever this is. I'm saying I need to think. I know. She stood up. He stood with her. She picked up the remaining flyers and held them against her chest. Take me home, she said. Not the subway. Take me home. He drove her to Mapo. They did not speak for most of the journey, 20 minutes through the evening traffic. She sat in the passenger seat with the flyers in her lap and looked at the city outside the window. The Han River as they crossed it, the apartment towers lit against the darkening sky, the ordinary moving body of Seoul around them. When he pulled up outside her building, she said, Did you ever think you wouldn't feel anything? Ever? Like, did you make peace with that? He kept his hands on the steering wheel. Yes, he said. And now? He did not answer immediately. A woman handed me a flyer at a traffic light and laughed at me without knowing who I was, he said. And I went back to that intersection the next morning because I couldn't explain why I needed to. She turned to look at him. When I canceled a $50 million meeting, he said, the day after, my team thought someone had died. She made a small sound, not quite a laugh, something more complicated. I have destroyed cities without hesitation, he said quietly, the words coming not as a rehearsed speech but as something finally breaking surface. Without losing sleep, without second thoughts. And you handing me that flyer was the first time I had been afraid of anything in years. Afraid of what? That I would do what I always do, see something and walk past it and never know what it was. She was quiet. Outside, a couple walked past on the pavement, laughing, not looking at the parked car. I'm not going to pretend that what you just told me about yourself is nothing, she said, because it's not nothing. It's a lot. It's a very serious amount of something. She paused. But I'm also not going to pretend that you're not the person who sat on a floor with me and talked to me, and helped me even when I didn't ask, and texted me every day and acted like 2 sentences was basically a declaration. She almost smiled. You are both things, Kim, and I don't know what to do with that yet. You don't have to decide now. I know you're not making me. She opened the door, gathered her flyers. She paused at the door. Don't disappear while I'm thinking. I can tell that's your instinct. Don't. He looked at her. Don't disappear, he said. That's what I said. She got out. She went into the building without looking back. Not coldly, but because she was a person who moved forward through things, not backward. He sat in the car for a long time. Then he took out his wallet. He put the blood-stained red flyer behind the yellow one. 2 flyers now, the beginning and the middle. He drove back into the city. This is the chapter they don't see coming. 3 days passed. She had said she needed to think, and he had said he would not disappear, and he had kept that. He had not called, not crowded her, had given her the space she asked for, with the discipline of a man who had spent his whole life converting discomfort into patience. On the 4th day, he texted, "How are you?" Not a question mark. He didn't punctuate it as a question because it wasn't a question. It was a check-in. The kind you send when you are trying to not send too many. She read it. He could see the red receipt. She did not reply. He told himself this was fine. She was thinking. She had said she needed to think. On the 5th day, he sent nothing. On the 6th day, he drove past the market. He did not stop. He drove past it slowly, the way a person drives past a place they are pretending not to need. And he saw through the window that she was there, at the counter, apron on, locks up, talking to Mrs. Bay with her hands moving the way they moved when she was making a point about something she cared about. And he kept driving. She was fine. She was just thinking. On the 7th day, Seung-jae came into his office at 10 a.m. with the morning operational report and found Kim Dae standing at the floor-to-ceiling window looking at the city below with an expression Seung-jae had never seen on him before. Not anger, not focus, not the cold blankness of a man processing strategy. Something lost. Seung-jae set the report on the desk. "She hasn't texted," Kim Dae said without turning around. Seung-jae said nothing. 7 days. "I know," Seung-jae said carefully. "The surveillance team has confirmed she is well. She is at the market. She is attending her language exchange sessions. I know she's well." He said it quietly, without sharpness. "That's not what I mean." Seung-jae was quiet for a moment. "Boss?" "Yes. What do you want to do?" Kim Dae turned from the window. He sat down at his desk. He picked up his pen. He set it down again. He looked at his phone. He had not looked at his phone like this in his life. Not since he was a young man before the syndicate had become everything. Not since he had been a version of himself that was still capable of being undone by silence. He had thought that version was gone. "Nothing," he said. "I'm going to do nothing. She asked for space and I will give her space." Seung-jae nodded and left. Kim Dae sat at his desk. He opened a file. The words in it did not arrange themselves into meaning. He closed it. He picked up his phone, put it down, picked it up again. He typed, "Take whatever time you need. I'll be here." He stared at it for a long time. He deleted it. He put the phone in his drawer. He lasted 4 hours. Then he took it back out and sent it. She read it. The receipt showed she had read it within 3 minutes. She did not reply. That night, Kim Dae sat in his apartment on the 43rd floor. Not the office, his actual living space, the rooms that were clean and precise and barely inhabited, and did something he had not done since he was perhaps 20 years old. He sat with the feeling, did not suppress it, did not redirect it into work, did not convert it into anything useful. Just sat with it. Wow, the way it spread through his chest like something structural failing. The way the silence from her phone felt specifically shaped. Shaped like her, like the particular warmth she carried that he had apparently become dependent on without noticing the moment it happened. He took out the yellow flyer. He looked at it for a long time. "Don't forget to eat." He had not eaten that day. He noticed this with something that might have been dark humor if he had been in the condition to find anything funny. On the 9th day, his phone rang. Not a text, a call. He picked it up before the first ring had finished. "Hi," she said. He said nothing for a moment, just heard her voice and felt the specific sensation of a structural thing holding. "Hi," he said. A pause. "I'm sorry for the silence," she said. "And I needed to be somewhere you weren't for a minute, because when I'm near you or talking to you, everything feels manageable, and I needed to find out if it felt manageable when I was alone with it. Does that make sense?" "Yes," he said. "I was angry," she said. "I want to be honest. Not at you exactly. At the situation. At the fact that men came to a printing shop to frighten me because of a man I hadn't even decided what to do about yet. At the fact that my world, which I had built very carefully into something good and clean and mine, had acquired this shadow I didn't ask for." A breath. "I was angry and I needed to sit with it Without your voice making it easier to forgive? He was quiet. I understand, he said. Do you? You needed to be sure, he said, showing that what you felt was real and not just the relief of being near someone who makes you feel safe. You needed to check if it survived the distance. A longer silence. Yes, she said quietly. That's exactly it. How did you? Because I did the same thing, he said. Every time I left the market, I drove away and I waited to see if it would resolve itself, if it would make sense as something ordinary, something I could classify and file and deprioritize. A pause. It never did. She was quiet for a moment. 9 days is a long time, she said, and there was something in her voice that was not quite an apology, but was shaped like one. I have been making decisions alone for 34 years, he said. 9 days was not comfortable, but it was yours. She exhaled, and then, when in a voice that was smaller and more real than her usual voice, the one she used when she was not performing ease but simply feeling it. I miss talking to you. I want you to know that. Even when I was angry, even when I was deciding, I missed it. He held the phone. He held the phone and looked at the yellow flyer on the table in front of him and felt something move through him that was not in any operational vocabulary he possessed. I kept your flyer, he said, from the first night. I've had it in my wallet for 2 months. A sound from her end, soft. You kept it, she said. I kept it. Kim. Yes. Don't disappear, she said. It was the same thing she had said at her building door, the same instruction, but it meant something different now. Now it was not a warning against his instinct. It was a choice, her choice. Now, I'm not going anywhere, he said. And that was the moment. Not the flyer, not the community dinner, not the floor of the printing shop. When Kim Day understood that the most frightening thing that had ever happened to him was not the 9 days of silence. It was the fact that he would have waited 9 more, and 9 after that. She called him 4 days after that first call. He answered before the second ring. I'm not walking away, she said. I just want you to know that officially. I thought about it. I could. It would probably be the sensible thing to do. But I've never been very interested in sensible when sensible means less true. He was quiet for a moment. Agatha. Yes? I will not let anything happen to you. I need you to understand that this is not a romantic statement. It is a logistical commitment. The people who tried to use you as leverage have been addressed. My organization has a long history of protecting the things it considers. He stopped. The things it considers what? She said. A longer pause. Important, he said. She was quiet for a beat. Okay, she said. Then we figure it out as we go. I've never done that. Figured things out as they go. I know. That's going to be annoying for you. A small pause. It'll be good for you. There it was. It'll be good for you. The same words she had used at the community hall months ago, before she knew anything. Still true in a completely different register now. Probably, he said. She laughed. Quick, real, complete. December came. The community dinner was the largest yet. Nearly 200 people, a proper sound system, food from 11 countries, Mrs. Bay in the corner doing her best not to cry and failing. Kim Day arrived at 6. No driver, no visible security. He arrived with containers of food. His chef had prepared them. Agatha saw the containers and raised an eyebrow. What is this? Korean food. Odd for a world kitchen. Your chef made this. Yes. You asked your chef to cook for my community dinner. The community needed Korean representation. I provided it. She laughed so hard she had to put the containers down. He stood with his hands in his pockets and watched her laugh, and felt the thing in his chest that had no name, that had been there since a traffic light in Itaewon on an ordinary night when a door opened and the world reorganized itself without asking permission. He had sat alone with this feeling for 9 days when she went quiet. He knew now exactly how much it weighed. He knew now exactly what it was. 6 months later, Agatha David opened a small cafe in Mapo. It had taken her longer than she planned. The fellowship had extended, the paperwork had been complicated, the small business loan had taken 3 applications, and it had happened with exactly the kind of stubborn, organized, make-it-work energy that had made Kim Day, watching all of it from varying distances, understand something new about the word admire. He had not arranged the loan. She had applied for it herself, been rejected twice, refined her proposal, applied a third time, and been approved on her own terms. He had known about each rejection before she told him, and each time he had said nothing and held the phone and not interfered, which was the hardest operational decision he had made in years. She would have known, and it would have mattered. And the cafe was small, 7 tables, a counter, a kitchen that was just big enough. She called it Agatha's. No subtitle, no concept statement, no branding document. Just her name, over the door in clean green letters. The menu had jollof rice. It also had Korean classics, a rotating international dish of the week, and the Korean-Nigerian fusion that Mrs. Bay had invented and which Agatha had formally admitted, in writing, on the printed menu, was actually excellent. Mrs. Bay came in every Tuesday. She sat at the corner table and ordered tea and watched the operation with the critical affection of a woman who had taught someone something and wanted credit for how well it had turned out. The cafe became something in the neighborhood, not famous in the way that places are famous when they are amplified by platforms and recommendations. Famous the way a good place becomes known, slowly, person by person, because it was somewhere you could sit for a long time without feeling rushed, and the food was real, and the person behind the counter made you feel seen. Kim Day came on Thursdays. He came in a plain jacket, no security detail visible, no car waiting outside. He walked from wherever he had parked, which was always a few streets away. He sat at the table by the window, the same table, by unspoken agreement that had never been discussed. He ordered the same thing each time: jollof rice, plantain, Korean barley tea. Agatha brought it herself when she wasn't too busy, which she always managed to be not too busy for. She sat with him sometimes, not always. The cafe had hours and customers. But when the Thursday afternoon lull came, she would bring her own tea and sit across from him, and they would talk. They talked the way people talk when they have stopped performing for each other, about her plans for a second dining table outside in spring, about a policy dispute affecting the Mapo business district that had arrived quietly at an acceptable resolution after Kim Day had a conversation with a city council liaison that was not technically about the policy dispute, about a phone call with her mother in Lagos that had lasted 2 hours and covered everything from the cafe's paint color to whether Agatha was eating enough, which Agatha reported with the specific affectionate exasperation of a woman who loves her mother completely and finds her exhausting in equal measure. About a book she was reading. He had read it years ago, found it cold and structural, and she found his description funnier than he intended. She told him when she thought he was wrong about something, which she did at least twice per Thursday, and she was usually correct. He brought her flowers sometimes, not big arrangements, nothing that would draw comment, a small bunch from the florist near where he parked. Seasonal things. She put them on the counter without ceremony, the way you place something that belongs somewhere. He still had the flyers, both of them. The original yellow one, soft and worn now, the creases permanent, the paper thinned at the folds from months of being carried, and the blood-stained red one from the printing shop. They were in his wallet, behind his cards, in the place where a person keeps the things they need to have close to them. He was not a man who had ever been sentimental about objects. He was also not anymore the man who had decided that sentiment was a vulnerability he could not afford. He had revised that position. He had revised it standing at a traffic light in Itaewon on an ordinary night, when a door opened and a hand appeared with a yellow piece of paper, and a voice said, "Please come. It'll be so fun. Free jollof rice." And everything he had built himself into cracked, very slightly, and let something in. He had confirmed the revision 9 days later, alone in his apartment with the flyer and the silence, when he finally understood that the most dangerous thing about Agatha David was not that she had made him feel something. It was that she had made him willing to wait. On a Thursday in early spring, she came to his table with 2 teas and sat down and said, "Do you know what today is?" "Thursday," he said. She laughed. "It's almost exactly a year since you took that flyer." He looked at her. She was different. The same but different. The fellowship was over. She was here, not temporarily, not as a student passing through, but as someone who had decided that Seoul was where she was building the next chapter. The cafe was evidence of that decision. The community language exchange, which had grown to 3 weekly sessions in a rented space in Mapo, was evidence of it. The way she talked about her neighborhood now, my neighborhood, the possessive, easy, and certain, was evidence of it. He was different too. He did not discuss this analytically, but Seung-jae had mentioned carefully that the office had noticed. The pace was different. The decisions were different. There was a quality of groundedness in his leadership now that had not been there before. Something that had made the organization steadier, even as he, personally, had become less controlled in ways that had turned out not to be dangerous, but, in fact, the opposite. He had a life. He had not had a life before. He had had a function. He reached into his pocket. He put the yellow flyer on the table between them. She looked at it. She reached out and touched the edge of it, gently, the way you touch something that has been somewhere significant for a long time. "You kept it," she said. "I kept it." She picked it up and turned it over. The back, her handwriting, faded but legible. More tomatoes. "Call Mr. Park, re-sound system. Remind G about tablecloths. Don't forget to eat." She smiled at it. And then she reached across to the counter and got a pen. She turned the flyer back over to the printed front, the bright yellow, the block letters, the address for a community dinner that had already happened a year ago and changed everything. She wrote something in the top corner. She slid it back to him. In her handwriting, in the corner of the flyer, her number, the same number that was already in his phone, that he had texted every day for months, that he had known before she ever gave it to him, that he had stared at during 9 days of silence and not called because she had asked him not to, and he had loved her enough to respect that. She wrote it again. On the flyer. "I know your number," he said. "I know you know," she said. "I'm giving it to you again. Properly, the way it should have started." She smiled. "Hi, I'm Agatha, and I organize community dinners, and I'm very annoying about jollof rice, and I'd like you to have my number." He held the flyer. He looked at her across the small table in the small cafe, with its 7 tables and the green letters over the door, and the seasonal flowers on the counter. "Kim," he said, "I'm in finance." She laughed. A real one. The first kind. Quick, complete, without performance. Outside the window, Seoul moved the way it always moved. Loud and continuous and indifferent to individual human moments. The great machine of it churning forward regardless. Inside the cafe, for the width of a Thursday afternoon, there was just the table, and 2 teas, and a worn yellow piece of paper with a number written in the corner. And the man who had run the most dangerous organization in the city, holding it in both hands, looking at a woman who had never been afraid of him, knowing with the specific clarity that he had once reserved only for operational certainty, that this was the only meeting that had ever mattered. He never stopped ruling the city. The empire continued. The operations ran. Seung-jae managed the mornings, and the lieutenants managed the territories. And Seoul hummed along on the substructure that the Dai Syndicate had maintained for 31 years. But on Thursdays, Kim Dae walked through Mappa with a small bunch of flowers and no visible security, and sat at a table by the window and ordered jollof rice. He came like an ordinary man, because one place in the city had decided to receive him that way. And he had learned at 35, what he had never known at 26 or 30, or any of the years between, that to be seen without fear by someone who has no reason to be afraid of you and chooses anyway to look is not a vulnerability. It is the only power worth having. And that's it. Seoul's most ruthless mafia king, brought to his knees by a yellow flyer, nearly broken by 9 days of silence, and saved by a woman who told him not to forget to eat. If this story hit you the way it hit me writing it, subscribe right now. New stories every week. Drop a comment below. What destroyed you the most? The canceled meeting? The 9 days he waited? The floor of the printing shop? Or the moment he said he would have waited 9 more days? And 9 after that? Tell me everything. Like the video if you stayed until the end. You know you felt it, and I'll see you in the next one.